Good morning. How's everybody this morning? Good, good. Everybody's mostly awake? Mostly awake. Spring ahead. How many guys just love springing ahead? How many? There's a few crazy people. Awesome. Good for you. Stoked. Everybody else, we're just suffering through it today. But kudos that you made it. Or you tuned in online. Could be one or the other. I'm stoked for you. My name is Pastor Jason. I'm the lead pastor here, and we have been going through the book of James. And so last week we started with a little kind of two-part look at wisdom. And we talked about godly wisdom and godless wisdom. And in fact, even through the month of March, that's one of the areas that I've just encouraged our body to engage in, is to engage in wisdom. So even this last week, I've been reading through Proverbs. I posted a couple things on our Instagram account just talking about the book of Proverbs and some of the ideas in Proverbs. So I think wisdom is so powerful. And the more I've kind of meditate on it, I think the information that I'm going to share with you today and the things that James really is teaching us, they're life-changing ideas. I promise if you just take a few of these ideas, you will see your relationships really change. Healthy, fruitful, fulfilling, finding that purpose that God has for your life. These are really some powerful ideas that James is going to share with us. And so this morning the title is Two Kinds of Wisdom, Part 2. Two kinds of wisdom. There's the godless wisdom and the godly wisdom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the godly wisdom that James is describing for us. And there's a lot of points to it, all right? So if you're you love to take notes, this is your day, 10 points this morning. If that is just overwhelming to you, just listen. I'll email the notes to you later. That's all good too. But be listening for how God might be speaking to you about wisdom. Because what I've found is, we live in a world full of godless wisdom. Everything we see, everything we hear pretty much is godless, right? It's not centered in God's wisdom. And so it's easy for us to slide into that. And the way that we see it most often is in our relationships with each other. I don't know about you, but a lot of times for me, my relationship with God, I feel like God is perfect. I'm not, but he loves me. And my relationship with God is usually pretty good. But it's the relationship with each other that is the challenge, right? It's the relationship with the people that you see every day that really is challenging in a lot of ways. It's the decisions that you make in those relationships that become challenging. And so this morning, I'm going to give you this big idea, and we're going to kind of carry it through as we talk. So here's a big idea. The big idea is the quality of your wisdom is measured by the achievement of your goals. The quality of your wisdom is measured by the achievement of your goals. You could say it in a different way. You might say the quality of somebody's directions could be measured by whether you reach your destination. Does that make sense? Somebody tells you how to get somewhere and you're going all over the place and you get lost somewhere, you're well, those directions weren't that great. Or somebody's hey, here's how you get there, this is what you do, and you just find it simple, easy. You're okay, I made it. Those were good directions. So godly wisdom is going to get us to a certain destination. It's God's destination. It's God's purpose. It's God's plan. And so, if you've ever heard that phrase, I'm going to follow Jesus, sometimes you hear that, and you're what does that mean, follow Jesus? I can't see him. One way that you can follow Jesus is you follow his wisdom, right? And the wisdom that is going to be revealed in James is going to give us some insight into that. And so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to kind of compare Jesus and the Pharisees. So we see wisdom of God in Jesus. And then we see the wisdom that's godless, unfortunately, in the Pharisees. These religious leaders, these religious Jewish leaders that were operating really not in godly wisdom, which is scary for us because this supposedly, the Pharisees were as good as it got with God. They were as close as you could get, supposedly. But we'll find they really were far from God. They didn't even recognize God when he showed up. So just to get it started, let's talk about a few practical things in this kind of idea. Okay, so measuring your wisdom by the achievement of your goals. If your goal is, let's say, just practically, like my goal is to be the employee of the month. I want to get my picture on the wall or my name on the plaque, or I want to get that little bonus check, whatever it is. I want to be the employee of the month. Like, so what are you going to do to be employee of the month? Well, I'm going to ignore all the customers and show up late. Is that going to work? No, you're not going to get there. You'll probably get to like the employee that gets fired at the end of the month, not the employee of the month. If you want to be the employee of the month, maybe you listen to the customers, maybe you pay attention to the needs, show up early, right? Like where you want to get to is determined by the choices you're making. Maybe you want to have strong relationships with your kids. Like, man, I really want to have strong relationship with my kids. So you decide like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work late every week and miss almost every one of their events. Is that going to work? No, it's not going to work. Maybe instead, like, I purpose not to work too late and try to make it to most of the events. Or like your destination is determined by your decisions. And a lot of times we want this destination, but we don't make the decisions to get there. And when we stop and consider it, it's like a no-brainer. But there's times where we're just living our life making decisions and we don't realize where it's going to lead us. If your goal is financial freedom, right? Like, I want to have financial freedom and security. Like, all right, so what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to buy this really cool car that I can't afford. And I'm going to make hundreds of dollars of payments every month, and then the interest is going to kill me. Like, well, that's not going to give you financial freedom, right? Maybe you should save up your money and buy something that you can afford with cash. Wow. Right? Like, where do you want to get to? What are you going to do? How are you going to get there? Last one, maybe your goal is for your family to know Christ. Like, I really want my family to know Christ. I really want my family to be founded on Christ. Well, then probably just like make every other commitment more important than spiritual life. Like, if there's a sports game, if there's an event, if there's a TV show, if there's anything, just make sure you always commit to that and you'll have a good spiritual life. It's like, no, that's stupid, right? That doesn't make sense. Like, prioritize spiritual life. Have spiritual conversations. Open the scripture with your family. Bring them into spiritual events like church or youth group or whatever. Like, you're going to see the decisions reach a certain destination. Is it the destination you want to get to? So when we look at Christ, we see that Jesus could, at the end of his life, say, "It is finished." He could say, "I've done everything in accordance to your will. I've lived for your pleasure." Jesus lived to follow and submit to God and fulfilled his purpose. But you look at the end of the life of the Pharisees, right? They were guilty, separated from God. They missed God's purpose and plan. And that's their decisions led them into that place. And life is full of decisions. Like just this week, we celebrated the life of Tom Brown. There was a memorial on Friday. And then there was a couple weddings yesterday, on Saturday. Hannah and Nathan and Devin and Diamond, they got married yesterday. And it was so interesting to like go from one to the next and just realize, guess what? That's life. One thing after another, and everyone goes through these different events and moments where you can stop and consider. Stop and consider where you at. So let's look at this verse together and we'll kind of pull it apart. In James chapter 3, it says, "But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruit, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." So James is really describing a lot of things. I'm going to look at each one of these because a lot of times, I feel like what happens is we don't see the wisdom for godless or godly. We don't realize it. We're just kind of operating in it. And Jesus had this interesting thing to say when the Pharisees, the religious leaders, they weren't happy with how he lived. right? He was a friend of the tax collectors and the sinners, and he ate and drank with them, and they just thought, man, you're just too kind of close to all these messed up people. You're too free and easy. You that's not good. But then they looked at John the Baptist, who was lived this very strict, structured life in the wilderness and called people to repentance. And they didn't like that either, right? Like, they didn't like the life that Jesus lived. They didn't like the life John lived. It wasn't fitting in their little square box. And Jesus said this very interesting thing. He said, wisdom is justified by her children. Wisdom is justified by her children. In other words, wisdom is shown to be good and right by what it produces. Wisdom is shown to be good and right by what it produces. So is your wisdom good? Well, is it producing good things? And James outlines this description for us. And so we're going to kind of take a look at this. Here's the first point. First point is, and I'm going to abbreviate because if you're taking notes, I'm just going to, God's wisdom, that's GW, God's wisdom. God's wisdom contains God's character. God's wisdom, godly wisdom, contains God's character. Notice the first thing that James says there, he says, the wisdom that is from where? Above. This wisdom is coming from God, and it contains his character. We know that all good and perfect gifts come from the Father of lights. That's what James has already talked to us. It comes down from above. And so this wisdom is coming down from above. It's coming from God, but it doesn't just originate from God. It's not a matter of you can only find wisdom if you read the Bible. You can find wisdom throughout your life in situations and circumstances as God reveals it to you, right? As God speaks and shows, and you see your neighbor, or you come to a memorial, or you have a conversation at work, and God's revealing wisdom. And the way that you know that it's God's wisdom is because it has God's character. So that God is holy and pure. God is eternal. God is good. The wisdom of God contains the character of God. It's oh yeah, that's how God is. And so James, his description here is a description not only of godly wisdom, but of God. And as we go through the verse, you'll see oh yeah, that's who God is. That's how God is. That's why we can look at Jesus and go, this is how Jesus is. This is his wisdom. This is who he is. This is his character. So godly wisdom contains God's character. It doesn't just come from I can only get God's wisdom from the scripture, from the Bible. Yes, you can, but yes, you can also in other ways as his Spirit gifts you with that, gifts you with the clarity and the understanding. All right, so the first thing, and he actually says first, is pure. He says God's wisdom, godly wisdom is first pure. So it's important to understand he's not just saying first because it's the first in the list. He's actually saying first as in significance and importance. So maybe you could say the first aspect of God's wisdom is purity. It's pure. It's an important piece. It's the key attribute. And the word pure in the Greek has actually two different words. The first part is the word truly, indeed, for sure. And then the second part of that is spotless, clean, immaculate. Like your son's room right now. Just kidding. Not really. Right, just seeing if you're listening. So here you could say it, you could kind of say it like this. Godly wisdom is truly without spot. Godly wisdom is truly without spot. It's without stain or marks. There's no residue of sin. There's no leftover of imperfection or impurity. Godly wisdom desires good for others and is good for others. What you were eating or drinking something that's just pure. It's perfect. There's no preservatives. There's no additives, whatever. It's the wisdom of God is pure. It's not clouded by politics. It's not marked by man-pleasing. right? Godly wisdom is pure. There's no manipulation or self-seeking. That's how Jesus lived. When you look at his life, like Jesus' motive for coming to the earth was pure. It was love, right? It was to bring forgiveness. It was to renew a relationship. Like it was a pure motive. He lived a pure life. And even when somebody wanted to exalt him, they're like, hey, man, this guy can multiply like fish and loaves and he can provide food for us. Like you should be the king. You rule us because you can provide for us and make it all happen. And he's like, nope, that's not my program. Even when they wanted him to be exalted, even when they wanted him to be lifted up, he's like, that's not my time yet. He had a different purpose. He was going to be lifted up in a different way, right? He was going to go to the cross. He wasn't looking for the crown. And yet the Pharisees, exact opposite, right? These religious Jews, they were always looking to exalt themselves. Jesus actually called them out on it. He's like, you guys, you love to be in your big robes and everybody think you're so important. You love like greetings, like, oh, Rabbi, so good to see you. Oh, yes. Love to, oh, come sit in the front. Like, love the good seats, all of that. It's impure. That's not pure wisdom. That's impure. They're wanting something for themselves. They were always playing a political game, right? They're always looking for an advantage for themselves. So what's this look like for us? This looks like if you have a choice that could make you look good at work, but it's not good for everybody else, it's probably not pure. There's impurity in that. There's a stain. There's a mark. And you know it because, like, you're tempted to do it, but you know if somebody finds out, you'll be embarrassed. Be like, that's kind of, I don't want you to know that I did that. Right? Like, you have a solution. A little dishonesty could really, like, make this all go away. A little lie can make this all go away. But that's a mark on your character. It's not pure. It's not pure in your motive. And so that's not godly wisdom. So you can reject that. And as you're thinking through your decisions and thinking through your life, you're like, no, I think that's not pure. Godly wisdom will solve a problem in a way that is pure. That's how Jesus lived. That's how he's calling us to live. So the third point goes along with the word peaceable. James tells us it's peaceable. And peaceable means having quietness or rest or harmony. And honestly, I really like that, like the idea of harmony. If you remember a while ago, I had Michael and Becca actually sing a harmony. And there's two different notes. There's two, different notes, I guess. I'm not musical. But they were singing something different, but it sounded good together. That's harmony. And that's what peaceable means. So godly wisdom, our third point is godly wisdom brings harmony. And I love this because it wasn't that Jesus was just like trying to, make everybody do everything he wanted necessarily. Like, do it my way. All this is the only way. And it wasn't that he just capitulated to everyone, whatever you want. But there was a way, and it was the right way. And what he looked for is harmony. He looked for common ground. He looked for a place where people could work together in a place of common ground. Now, he didn't compromise the truth, right? Jesus didn't compromise the truth, but he looked for a place where people could come together in common ground. And I think an interesting occasion was the Pharisees had brought a woman that they said was caught in the very act of adultery, right? So they throw this woman caught in the very act of adultery. Like, what do you think we should do? Like, the law says we should stone her. What do you say? Now, here's the thing. Jesus didn't you guys are so mean. I can't believe, he didn't berate them. And he didn't go to the woman and be like, you are so low. You're dirty. How'd you get yourself in this situation? Neither of those things. He didn't choose sides, but he looked for common ground. And he said, okay, how about whoever's without sin, why don't you throw the first stone? And then he just waited and doodled in the dirt. And what happened? The Pharisees realized, you know what the common ground was? We're all sinners. We're all broken. I'm trying to condemn her, but I'm actually condemned too because I'm not without sin. And that common ground brought peace, right? And it peaceably dispersed. And Jesus looks up, he's like, hey, where's your accusers? It's like, I don't have anybody. The only one who could didn't. And he said, go and sin no more. Right? Like that's the wisdom of God. They didn't ask him a question because they wanted an answer. They asked him a question to stir up trouble. And Jesus brought them to that place of understanding, hey, we're all sinners. And the best place to work together is on common ground. So finding common ground helps us to walk in the wisdom of God, right? And so, real life, maybe there's people that are divided. Maybe there are people divided in your family or at work, and there's this split, and they're like, choose my side. No, choose my side. And instead of choosing sides, you try to help them find common ground. Well, what can we all agree on? How can we find a place where we see eye to eye? Maybe instead of somebody starting to start a fight, and instead of fighting back, you just ask some questions and try to figure out where they're coming from so that you can meet them somewhere, right? Like wisdom of God is peaceable. It brings harmony. It brings two different people together in unity. And that is a very powerful thing. So the next thing he says about godly wisdom is it's gentle, right? It's gentle. And so I'm going to say it kind of in a different way because gentleness really is kind of the ability to control your emotions because you care. We kind of talked about this a little bit last week, right? Like the little kid with the little hamster, like, oh, he's so cute. And then they just squeezes him. It's like, no, gentle because you care. You realize, like, I'm going to control my excitement and not squeeze the life out of the hamster. So here's the way I want to say it this morning for our fourth point is this. Godly wisdom doesn't freak out. Godly wisdom doesn't freak out. It's not like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Oh, I don't know. Oh, it's gentle, right? Gentle, thoughtful. And that's how Jesus was. Jesus didn't freak out on people, right? He wasn't freaked out by the lepers who came or the prostitutes who showed up. I mean, can you imagine having let's say you have a small group and like 3 prostitutes and 2 lepers show up and you're like, oh, I'm kind of freaking out. I don't know what to do. Jesus didn't freak out. He was gentle. He knew that the prostitute needed love and the leper needed healing. He cared about the person. And that's a lot of times what happens because we get freaked out about the thing. Whatever that thing is, and we forget that the thing is attached to a person. And Jesus never got so caught up in the thing that he forgot the person. And so he was gentle. He was gentle with the people. Like the man whose hand was withered, and he healed him. Right? The countless people that he touched. The Pharisees were not gentle at all because they didn't care about people. They were rough. They were unkind. They said hurtful things. Here this person gets healed, but it's on the Sabbath, and so they just lose their mind. How can this happen? What is going on? Like, I was blind, and now I can see, and you're worried about what day of the week it is? Like, you're just freaking out. Godly wisdom doesn't freak out, it's gentle. How's that work for us? Well, maybe spilled milk. Spilled milk at the table, freaking out. Oh, you spilled the milk. Clean it up. Don't freak out. Why? Because there's a person who spilled the milk. It's not just about the milk. You got a speeding ticket. Your insurance is going to go through the roof, and my insurance is going to I can't believe that, all that freaking out. Gentle. Why? Because you know that there's a driver there, right? And they probably already feel bad. So, gentle. Not that you don't deal with it, not that you don't address it, not that you don't, walk through the reality and the seriousness, but you do it in a way that's gentle because you realize there's a person. that's involved in this thing. Like somebody's at work and they just blew the deal and you're freaking out. Like, do you know how much money we lost? And do you know like where this is going to bring us? And I don't even know where this is going to happen. Gentle. Why? Because it's a person. It's a person. They have value. Now, one of the things that people talk about sometimes, they like to excuse their anger because Jesus threw the tables in the temple, right? You know the story? It's like, well, Jesus got angry and so I get angry. Like, okay, let's just talk about that real quick. So, first thing is, number one, Jesus is perfect. We are all disqualified at that level, right? Like, he has perfect character, perfect in purity, perfect in motive. Like, we don't have that. We're not perfect. So let's be careful with that one. Second thing is, it's only recorded twice. So in 33 years, if you get angry twice, like, all right, that's not too bad, right? Third thing is, anger is usually a cover for something else. Usually anger comes up because there's something else inside. What was inside for Jesus? He was angry because people were trying to worship and they were getting ripped off. So his heart, in his heart, he was caring for people. Why are you angry? Why am I angry? Right? Like, check the motive because usually there's more going on. So, gentle, not freaking out. Next thing he says is it's willing to yield. Godly wisdom is willing to yield, he describes it as. And I think it's a really interesting choice here. Willing to yield. Do you see there's an attitude and a posture? It's not just yield. It's willing to yield. Years ago, Deborah and I we were in Maui for a few days, and we drove to Hana. The road to Hana, it's like, if you're not the driver, you're going to get sick. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to drive because I'm going to get car sick if not. And there's all these like one-lane bridges. And you come up to this bridge, and someone has to what? Yield. Or you're both going to get stuck. And that's how sometimes life is. Like, you come up to this place, and it's like, I'm not going to yield. And then they're like, well, I'm not going to yield. And you're just sitting there honking at each other. Somebody just yields, and then they go and you go. That's how it's supposed to work. And sometimes, in Maui, they're like, you're not a local, and you will yield to me. Whatever. Somebody yield. Willing to yield. So here's how I'm going to put this fifth point is this. Godly wisdom has open hands. And I just want you to try it right here. Just try it, if you will. Humor me. Open hands. This is a very hard way to fight, isn't it? Right? This is a tough way to fight. This helps us not fight because our hands are open. Willing to yield means I have open hands. My posture, my attitude. It's the realization that I'm not here to fight, but I'm also open to learn. I'm open to listen. I'm open to receive. Like, let us never be so arrogant we think we're infallible. So our hands are open so we can listen and so we can receive and so we can learn. We're willing to yield. You know that phrase, I used to say it a lot at work, was like, okay, is this the hill we're going to die on? Right, you heard that? Is this the hill we're going to die on? Guess what? You can only do that once, so choose carefully. Right, like every hill can't be the hill you're willing to die on. It better be pretty darn important. Because two things are going to happen if it's like, this is the hill I'm going to die on. Either you die or you kill someone. And neither of those are great outcomes, right? It's not healthy. It's like, what you're saying is, this is what I'm going to fight about. This is the hill. This is the place. I'm standing on this one. So careful we must be. That sounded like Yoda. So careful we must be. Choose wisely the hill that you're going to be willing to die on, because there's not very many hills that are that important. Now, Jesus was willing to die on a hill, right? We know Jesus was willing to yield. He yielded his life. In that Garden of Gethsemane, he's like, not my will, but yours be done. When he stood before Pilate, he was like, yielded. When they arrested him, yielded. When the Romans crucified him on the cross, his hands were open. That's a power move. Being willing to yield. The Pharisees, they wouldn't yield to anyone. It was my way or the highway all the time with the Pharisees. You can't do it this way. You can't do it that way. You're not keeping our 380 rules. It's got to be done like this all the time. This is how you wash your hands, and this is how you do this, and this is... It's like, man, willing to yield, willing to learn, willing to see. So maybe just personally, you have some real strong feelings about something. I remember when the kids were little, it was like really like serious? Nap schedule. You know what I'm saying? Nap schedule. Like they have to go down. I'm sorry, we can't have that party because they have to go down at 10:30. What about 10:45? Nope, 10:30. Right? Like you just get so set on stuff. Or a curfew. It's 12:02 and you're late. And you will now be punished. It's like, okay. Is that really that important? What's really the point? This procedure at work, it has to be done exactly. Like, there are some things that have to be done exactly. But can you be willing to yield? This is the college you have to go to. This is the food you have to eat. This is the person you have to marry. Like, willing to yield. Open hands. Now, here's the thing about open hands. Open hands takes faith, right? Jesus was willing to yield because he trusted his Father. Willing to yield does involve some element of trust, but the best relationship of trust needs to be between you and God. Because the other people, when you yield or when you have open hands, sometimes they're going to let you down. So when I have yielded hands, when I have open hands, I'm trusting that God will fight this battle. I'm trusting that God will show the way. I'm trusting that God will change the heart. I'm opening my hands and I'm doing it by faith. And that's godly wisdom. Next one is, it says, and he puts these two together, he says, full of mercy and good fruit. So James describes it as full of mercy and good fruit. These two things go together. I looked up this word mercy in the Strong's Concordance. I thought it was really interesting. This is the definition of mercy. It says, kindness or goodwill towards the miserable and afflicted, joined with a desire to help them. Right? Like when we say that God is merciful to us, like we're kind of saying we're miserable and afflicted. This is true. And a desire to help. And so you see this mercy goes along with good fruits. Like I see somebody that needs help and I help them and it brings good fruits. That's godly wisdom. So this is the way I'm going to say it with our 6th point is this: godly wisdom desires and brings goodness. Godly wisdom desires and brings goodness. It's like here's the desire, but then there's the fulfillment. And I mean, if that's not the life of Christ, what is? Right? Constantly mercy. Constantly good fruit. You remember that situation where Jesus is talking, he's teaching, and there's these guys and they dig through the roof and lower their friend down? Can you imagine if Jesus wasn't merciful? He'd be like, what are you doing? Like, excuse me, I'm on my 2nd point here. You're kind of interrupting something important. I am the Word of God. I'm teaching the Word of God, and you're bringing this sinner in front of me? This miserable, afflicted person? But in his mercy, what does he do? He forgives him, and he heals him. Like, that's mercy. And it's full of good fruit. Pharisees? Nope. No mercy. No good fruit. Like, you ever thought about, like, all these religious leaders, what did they actually do that's recorded in Scripture that's good? That's a tough thing to find. It's a tough thing to find something actually good that they did because they never wanted to show mercy. They enjoyed judgment. They judged Jesus. They judged the disciples. They enjoyed judgment more than mercy. But we know from our earlier study, mercy triumphs over judgment. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Maybe she deserved to be fired, but you give her another chance, and she turns it around. She becomes a star employee, right? Maybe somebody deserves punishment, and you give them a warning, and they really grow and develop from that. Maybe someone misspeaks. This one I thought was so interesting when I was thinking about that. So I was like, maybe you ever had a conversation with somebody and then they say something and it's not quite right and you just jump all over it? Like, don't you say, that. And they're like, that's not what I meant. You're like, no, I don't care, you said it. Mercy is allowing someone to misspeak and giving them the time to explain it or pull it back or even not have to worry about it because you know what they actually meant. Like, that's mercy. And I promise you, that's going to bring good fruit. If it's like you're just analyzing and condemning every single word they say, like, that's not going to help your relationship. That's not going to bring the glory of God or the peace of God. And so mercy brings good fruit. Seventh point, he says, without partiality. Without partiality. God's wisdom is without partiality. So I'm going to say it like this. God's wisdom, GW, doesn't play favorites. It doesn't play favorites. Now, this is, I think, a really important one to understand. I don't lean one way or the other because of my personal opinion or my personal feelings. I am not thinking about someone related to what they can give me or get from me. I'm thinking about someone in relation to who they are and who God says they are. Right? Like, that's how we determine. Like, every person Christ dealt with, he dealt with them with love and truth and grace. Right? Like, all the same. But all uniquely. Because here's the thing, and I think this is a really important understanding. He doesn't play favorites, but not everyone is the same. He dealt with everyone with love and truth and grace, but he dealt with them in different ways. And so we don't have partiality, but we realize that everybody is different. It'd be like if you sit down, you sit your family down, and you're like, okay, we're having frozen yogurt tonight. Everybody has, frozen yogurt. Yay. The one lactose intolerant person in your family is like, I don't want that. And you're like, doesn't matter. That's what everybody's getting. Everybody has to have the same. That's fair. I can't play favorites. Well, that's dumb. Right? Because I can't have that. And partiality understands who people are. Impartiality understands people are different, but all valued, but all important, but all loved. So, sinner or saint, Jesus treated people the same. But Judas and Peter, he spoke to differently. Right? Thomas, he spoke to different than he did John. Why? Because they're different people, but everybody was valued. So we don't base it on what we think about someone, on what they can do for us. We base it on who God says they are, what God says about them. Like, for instance, the Pharisees. The Pharisees didn't like Jesus. They didn't like the way he did it. They didn't like the way he lived. They didn't like anything about Jesus. And so they just wanted to get rid of him. He doesn't play on our team. He's not listening. He's not playing by our rules. So, off. Done. Goodbye. If you don't play my game my way, you can't play at all. That's partiality. That's how the Pharisees lived. So maybe, practical. Maybe you give someone a bigger portion because they're a bigger person, but not because they're a better person, right? Like, maybe someone gets a raise because they do a better job, but not because they're your best friend. That's partiality. The wisdom of God is impartial. It doesn't play favorites. The next point that he gives us is this description. James says, without hypocrisy. Without hypocrisy. And I think that's kind of an interesting way to say it. The way I'm going to say it is God's wisdom is transparent. God's wisdom is transparent because hypocrisy means to put on a mask. That's what an actor would do, is he would put on a mask, and a hypocrite was an actor wearing a mask playing a role. And the wisdom of God is transparent. There is no mask. There is no nothing to hide. There's not somebody to impress. There's not a role to play. And I think you can see that with Jesus. Jesus wasn't an actor. He didn't act one way and then another. He didn't put on a show for one people and then, a different for somebody else. He was transparent. He spoke the truth, whether you wanted to hear it or not. He wept. He got upset. He was a real person. He was transparent in his integrity. He didn't play a role to manipulate people or to try to gain an advantage. Right? God's wisdom is transparent. It's clear. It reminds me of, if you've ever gone to the store and somebody is trying to sell you something, do you ever have this thought you get a commission? Right? You're are you going to get extra because I'm buying this? Or do you really think it's the right thing for me? Godly wisdom is transparent. Pharisees, they had everything to hide all the time. They lied, they covered up, they manipulated, they weren't transparent. Now, it wasn't that they wouldn't tell the truth, but here's the difference. They wouldn't tell all the truth. Transparency doesn't just mean telling the truth, it means not hiding the truth. Right? I'll tell you all of this right here, but I'm hiding this over here. Transparency is hey, this is the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. That's how godly wisdom is, nothing to hide. So for us, we don't put on an act to keep up appearances. We're willing to share our honest struggles. We're willing to talk about our real fears. Man, I'm anxious about this. Oh, you're the pastor. Should you be anxious? I'm anxious about this. I'm seeking the Lord. I'm asking for prayer. Whatever it is, we're honest about it. We're not just trying to keep up appearances. We're transparent. And that's so helpful. So then this last verse that I want to look at with you, just a couple more points and we'll be done. The New Living Translation says it like this. I'm going to read it to you. It says, "And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness." Planting seeds of peace by peacemakers produce a harvest of righteousness. So godly wisdom has a result. And our ninth point is this: godly wisdom results in right living. It results in right living. This is the right way to go. This is going to get me to the destination that I want. Right? If godliness is your destination or desired destination, then you've got to make the decisions to get there. You can't just live any other way you please and expect to get to where you want to be. Just like you can't go outside and go, I'm going to go home and then just make a whole bunch of crazy turns. I've got to make the decision to steer my car where I want to go. And so godly wisdom results in right living. Jesus lived rightly. He lived a righteous life. And so as we follow him, we follow in righteousness. And we experience righteousness. And along with righteousness comes peace. Because we've done it right. We've lived right. Here's the last one. I'm going to have the worship team come up and we're going to close in a song together. But our last point is this: godly wisdom is an investment. I promise you, godly wisdom is an investment. He uses this metaphor of planting and harvesting, and I think it's really appropriate because you and we're going to have to plant wisdom. Godly wisdom. We're going to have to plant it, and then sometimes we're going to have to wait. we're going to have to wait for it, because sometimes it takes a while to come up. But it comes from God, and it's a process in life. And if you continue to plant those seeds, I promise you, you're going to see a good harvest. But the harvest comes from him. So this morning, I'm going to ask you to stand with me as we close in this song, and we want to look to him. We want to look to him for our wisdom. We want to look to him for our help, because he wants to give us wisdom. And maybe there's decisions that you're struggling with. Maybe there's relationships that you're having a hard time with. Let's look to him and to his wisdom. I'll come back up and we'll close together.
God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do, yeah. You know just what to do. God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do. And I will love you, Lord, my strength. And I will love you, Lord, my shield. And I will love you, Lord, my rock. Forever all my days, I will love you, God. Let's sing this together. God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do. And I will love you, Lord, my strength. And I will love you, Lord, my shield. And I will love you, Lord, my rock. Forever all my days, I will love you, God. And I will love you, Lord, my strength. And I will love you, Lord, my shield. And I will love you, Lord, my rock. Forever all my days, I will love you, God. Let's sing hallelujah together.
isn't it good to know that we're not alone in this? That he has wisdom that he wants to give, that he is our strength, that our hands are open to him. So if you have a decision to make, if you have something you want prayer for, a couple of us will be up front. If you need some prayer, come up front and let's seek the Lord together. Because what we ultimately want to do is walk with the Lord. And one way that we walk with the Lord is to walk in his wisdom. That is the way to walk in godly wisdom. And that godly wisdom is going to lead to godliness and good fruit. So that when you look back, you can say, okay, this is where I wanted to be. I'm seeing fruit. Now, the great thing about this is that you can readjust as long as you've got breath, right? You're here, you're listening, you're watching, whatever it is, and you go, I haven't really been walking in godly wisdom. I've kind of been doing the worldly wisdom. It's kind of about my feelings. It's kind of about me, what feels good, like what the world says. We can change at any time and readjust. And I promise, like, if you just take a few of these things, okay, this is the one I'm going to work on, you're going to see good fruit. Because that's what James says. There's a fruit, there's a harvest of righteousness. There's good fruit, mercy and good fruit. And that's what we need, isn't it? Like our community, our families, like that's amazing. That's amazing life change. That's what I'm praying. That's what I'm hoping. So this week, may you continue to engage in wisdom. May you live out the wisdom of God in the relationships that he's given you and in the places where you find yourself. Come to the workshop this weekend. Open the book of Proverbs. Like, look for ways to engage in wisdom so that you can enjoy the fruit of it for your good and for his glory. Amen? Amen. God bless you guys. Thanks so much for coming. Come up for prayer if you need it.